History is filled with powerful figures. Kings, emperors, and warriors often dominate the stories we tell about the past. But sometimes, a figure emerges who challenges our expectations. They rewrite the rules of power. Empress Mintiwab of Ethiopia was one such person. She was a woman who, in the 18th century, refused to be a mere footnote in her husband's or her son's story. Instead, she claimed power for herself, not just as a temporary guardian, but as a crowned sovereign. Her story is one of immense ambition, political genius, and profound personal tragedy. It is a story that forces us to look again at the nature of leadership in a complex and changing world. Mintiwab's name, which means beautiful scent in the Amharic language, belies the steel and determination that defined her life. She was not simply an empress by marriage. She became a ruler in her own right, a co-sovereign who held the reins of the Ethiopian empire for decades. In an era when the role of women in politics was often confined to the shadows, Mintiwab stepped boldly into the light. She navigated the treacherous currents of court politics, forged alliances, and commanded armies. Her journey from a noblewoman of the highlands to the pinnacle of imperial power is a testament to her extraordinary character and intelligence, a story of survival and dominance in a world built by and for men. Her rule was a fascinating chapter in Ethiopia's long and storied history. It was a time of great cultural flourishing, but also one of deep political instability. Mintiwab stood at the center of it all. She was a builder, a diplomat, and a matriarch who used her family connections as a shield and a sword. But her story is also a cautionary tale. It shows how personal rivalries, even within a family, can threaten to tear a nation apart. The clash between Mintiwab and her ambitious daughter-in-law became a symbol of the fractures that were beginning to appear in the very fabric of the empire, setting the stage for a period of decline. To understand Empress Mintiwab is to understand the complexities of power. It is to see how strength can be found in diplomacy as much as in battle. Her life raises profound questions about what it means to lead. Is leadership about absolute control, or is it about the wisdom to share power? How does one balance personal ambition with the good of a nation? Mintiwab's story does not provide easy answers. Instead, it offers a powerful portrait of a woman who dared to rule, leaving behind a legacy that continues to resonate through the centuries. A legacy written in the stone of castles and the memory of a nation. To understand Empress Mintiwab, we must first understand the world she inhabited. We must travel back to 18th century Ethiopia, a land of ancient traditions and rugged, breathtaking landscapes. At the heart of this empire was a city unlike any other in Africa, Gondar. Founded in the 17th century by Emperor Fasilides, Gondar was the imperial capital, a permanent center of power after centuries of mobile royal camps. It was a city of magnificent castles, ornate churches, and bustling markets. European travelers who reached it were astonished, calling it the Camelot of Africa, a testament to its mythical and powerful aura in a continent often misunderstood by outsiders. Gondar was more than just a collection of impressive buildings. It was the nerve center of the Ethiopian Empire. From within its royal enclosure, the Fasil Gebi, emperors made laws, received ambassadors, and presided over a sophisticated court culture. This was a world of intricate ceremony, religious devotion, and constant political maneuvering. Power was a currency traded in whispers in the palace corridors, as much as it was declared in royal edicts. The city was a melting pot of nobles from across the empire's diverse regions, each vying for influence and favor at the imperial court. It was into this vibrant and dangerous world that Mintiwab would one day step. The Ethiopia of this era was a Christian kingdom, an island of faith surrounded by different religious and political powers. The Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church was not just a spiritual institution, it was a fundamental pillar of the state and national identity. The emperors were seen as the protectors of this faith, their legitimacy deeply intertwined with their piety. This religious landscape was complex, with fierce theological debates often spilling over into politics, creating factions and feuds that could make or unmake an emperor. For any ruler, navigating these religious disputes was as critical as commanding the loyalty of their generals. This was the stage upon which Mintiwab's life would unfold. It was a world of immense opportunity and profound risk. The splendor of Gondar's castles concealed a political arena where alliances were fragile and betrayal was a constant threat. The very structure of the empire, with powerful regional lords often challenging the central authority of the emperor, meant that ruling required a delicate balance of force and diplomacy. Mintiwab would have to master this dangerous game. She would have to learn to navigate the complexities of faith, family, and factionalism to not only survive but to thrive in the heart of the Ethiopian empire. Empress Mintiwab was not born into the imperial Solomonic dynasty that had ruled Ethiopia for centuries. She came from the powerful nobility of Kwara, a region in the highlands west of Lake Tana. Her family was influential, respected, and commanded significant military strength in its own right. Her birth name was Welete Giorgis, but she was known by the name Mintiwab. Her lineage gave her status and connections, making her a valuable asset in the intricate web of Ethiopian politics. She was not just a beautiful woman, she was the daughter of a powerful house, a strategic prize for any aspiring ruler looking to consolidate their power base. Her moment came when she caught the eye of the reigning emperor, Bakafa. Their marriage was far more than a simple love match. It was a masterful political alliance. Emperor Bakafa was a strong but often ruthless ruler, known for traveling his empire in disguise to observe his people and his officials. He faced numerous plots and rebellions from regional nobles who resented his attempts to centralize power. By marrying Mintiwab, Bakafa secured the loyalty of her influential family and the formidable military forces of Kwara. This union was a cornerstone of his strategy to stabilize his reign and secure his dynasty. Mintiwab quickly proved to be more than just a political bride. At the court in Gondar, she demonstrated a sharp intellect and a keen understanding of power. She was not a passive queen consort, content to remain in the background. She became a trusted advisor to her husband, learning the art of statecraft directly from one of Ethiopia's most cunning emperors. She observed the court's intrigues, understood the motivations of the powerful nobles, and learned how to build and maintain loyalty. This period was her apprenticeship. It was during her years as Bakafa's wife that she forged the political skills that would one day make her a ruler. The birth of her son, Iyasu, further solidified her position. He was the heir to the throne, the future of the Solomonic dynasty. His birth ensured that Mintiwab's influence would extend far beyond her husband's lifetime. She was now the mother of a future emperor, a role that gave her immense authority and a vested interest in the stability of the realm. Her marriage to Bakafa had brought her to the center of power. Her son's birth guaranteed she would remain there. The stage was set for her transformation from queen consort to the ultimate power behind and beside the throne. The turning point in Mintiwab's life arrived with the death of her husband, Emperor Bakafa, in 1730. The passing of a powerful emperor often created a dangerous power vacuum in Ethiopia. Regional lords and ambitious nobles would see it as an opportunity to challenge the succession and advance their own interests. Mintiwab's son, Iyasu II, was just a child. According to tradition, she would be expected to act as his regent, a temporary caretaker of the throne until he came of age. But Mintiwab had grander ambitions. She had no intention of being a mere placeholder, a temporary guardian of power who would fade into obscurity. In a move that was both audacious and brilliant, Mintiwab refused the limited role of regent. Instead, she orchestrated her own coronation. She had herself crowned not as a regent, but as a co-ruler alongside her young son. This was a stunning and almost unprecedented act in Ethiopian history. It meant that she was not just ruling in her son's name, she was ruling in her own right, vested with the full authority of a sovereign. The crown was placed on her head, a symbol for all to see that her power was not borrowed. It was hers. This single decision transformed her from the emperor's mother into an empress regnant. This bold gambit was not without risk. It challenged centuries of patriarchal tradition and could have easily sparked a rebellion. But Mintiwab had prepared for this moment. She drew on the immense power of her own family from Quara. Her brothers and other relatives were placed in the most important positions in the government and the military. This created a powerful Quaran faction at court, a loyal bloc of supporters who owed their positions directly to her. Her family's strength became her shield, protecting her and her young son from any potential challengers who questioned her right to rule. By being crowned, Mintiwab sent a clear message to the empire. She was not a woman to be underestimated. She was the legitimate, divinely sanctioned ruler of Ethiopia, sharing the throne with her son. This act secured the immediate succession and stabilized the empire at a moment of great vulnerability. It was a masterstroke of political theater and raw power. Mintiwab had not just protected her son's inheritance, she had claimed her own. For the next 3 decades, the Ethiopian Empire would not have one ruler, but 2. The young Emperor Iyasu II and his formidable mother, Empress Mintiwab. With her crown secured, Empress Mintiwab settled into the long and complex task of governing the Ethiopian Empire. Her reign, alongside her son Iyasu II, was characterized by a distinct political style. She understood that power in Ethiopia did not just flow from the emperor's decree, it rested on a delicate network of alliances, family ties, and regional loyalties. Her primary strategy was to consolidate power by placing her own kin in key positions. Her brothers, particularly the powerful Ras Wolde Loyal, became her most important generals and governors. This so-called Quaran dynasty, as it became known, effectively ran the empire on her behalf. This reliance on family was both a strength and a weakness. On one hand, it ensured a core of unwavering loyalty around the throne. Mintiwab could trust her relatives to carry out her orders and defend her against plots from rival noble houses. They became the backbone of her administration, managing the provinces, leading the armies, and collecting the revenues that funded the imperial court. This strategy allowed her to project her authority across the vast and rugged domains of the empire, maintaining a level of central control that had often eluded her predecessors. She ruled through her family, making the state an extension of her own household. Beyond her family, Mintiwab was also a skilled diplomat. She understood the importance of culture and religion as tools of statecraft. During her reign, Gondar experienced a cultural golden age. She was a great patron of the arts, commissioning the construction of beautiful churches and palaces. The most famous of these is the Debre Bahan Selassie Church in Gondar, renowned for its stunning ceiling covered with the faces of angels. She also built her own palace, a castle of exquisite design just outside the main royal enclosure. These projects were not just acts of piety or vanity. They were statements of power, wealth, and legitimacy, reinforcing the divine right of her and her son to rule. Her rule brought a period of relative stability and cultural flourishing. The court at Gondar was lavish, and the arts thrived under her patronage. She fostered trade and maintained a degree of peace within the empire's core provinces. However, her method of rule, favoring her Quaran relatives above all others, sowed seeds of resentment. The traditional nobility of other regions, particularly the Amhara lords, felt excluded from power. They saw the court as being dominated by outsiders from Quara. This growing discontent would create deep fractures in the political landscape, setting the stage for future conflict that would test Mintiwab's power to its very limits. As her son, Emperor Iyasu II, came of age, Empress Mintiwab faced a new and unexpected challenge to her authority. This challenge did not come from a rebellious general or a rival lord. It came from within her own family, from her daughter-in-law. To further cement the power of the dynasty, Mintiwab had arranged for Iyasu to marry Wubit, a beautiful and ambitious woman from the powerful Oromo peoples. The marriage was intended to be a strategic alliance, bringing the influential Oromo clans into the imperial fold and broadening the dynasty's base of support. But it would have consequences that Mintiwab could never have foreseen. Wubit, who took the name Welete Bersabe, was not content to be a pawn in her mother-in-law's political games. She was proud, intelligent, and deeply aware of her own noble heritage. She quickly grew to resent the overwhelming influence that Mintiwab and her Kwaran relatives held at court. Welete Bersabe believed that as the emperor's wife, she, not the emperor's mother, should be the most powerful woman in the empire. She began to build her own faction, promoting her Oromo relatives to positions of power to counterbalance the dominance of Mintiwab's Kwaran family. The palace in Gondar became a battleground for two rival queens. The rivalry between Mintiwab and Welete Bersabe was more than just a personal feud. It represented a fundamental clash of political interests and regional identities within the empire. On one side stood Mintiwab, the established matriarch, with her power rooted in her Kwaran kin and the Amhara political establishment she had cultivated. On the other was Welete Bersabe, the young and ambitious upstart, whose power was based on her Oromo connections, a group that was increasingly influential in imperial politics. The emperor, Iyasu II, was caught in the middle, torn between his loyalty to his mother and his affection for his wife. This division at the very heart of the imperial family paralyzed the court. Every appointment, every political decision became a point of contention between the two factions. The Kwaran nobles loyal to Mintiwab clashed with the Oromo nobles loyal to Welete Bersabe. The unity and stability that Mintiwab had worked so hard to build began to crumble, replaced by suspicion and intrigue. The whispers in the palace corridors grew louder, and the empire became effectively divided into two camps. The personal rivalry of two powerful women had escalated into a political crisis that threatened the very foundations of the state. The death of Emperor Iyasu II in 1755 brought the simmering conflict to a boiling point. His passing left another child on the throne, his son Iyoas, the grandson of both Mintiwab and Welete Bersabe. Now the question of who would control the empire was no longer a matter of influence. It was a struggle for survival. Mintiwab, the experienced stateswoman, naturally assumed she would continue to rule as she had for her son. But Welete Bersabe, the young emperor's mother, saw this as her opportunity to finally seize control. She was determined that her son's reign would not be a repeat of his father's, dominated by his grandmother. The rivalry between the two queens now openly split the empire. Welete Bersabe, championing her Oromo heritage, insisted that the Oromo language be spoken at court, a direct challenge to the traditional Amharic language of the Amhara-Tigrayan elite. She summoned her powerful Oromo relatives to Gondar, forming a formidable army to back her authority. In response, Mintiwab called upon her own Kwaran kin and their allies among the Amhara nobility. The capital, Gondar, became an armed camp, with the factions of the two queens facing each other down. The empire was on the brink of civil war, a conflict born from the feud within its ruling family. The situation escalated beyond the control of either woman. To break the deadlock, one of the factions made a fateful decision. They called upon a powerful warlord from the Tigray region, Ras Mikael Sehul, to come to Gondar and act as an arbiter. Ras Mikael was a brilliant but utterly ruthless political operator. He arrived in Gondar with his own army and his own ambitions. He initially played the two sides against each other, but his ultimate goal was to claim supreme power for himself. The two queens, in their struggle for dominance, had inadvertently invited a predator into the heart of the empire. This was the beginning of the end for Gondar's golden age. Ras Mikael Sehul eventually took control, murdering the young emperor Iyoas and installing his own puppet rulers on the throne. Empress Mintiwab was utterly defeated. Her power was broken, and she was forced to retreat from the capital to her palace at Cusquam, where she lived out the rest of her days in seclusion, a witness to the chaos she had unwittingly helped unleash. The central authority of the emperor collapsed, and Ethiopia entered a long and dark period known as the Zemene Mesafint, or the Era of the Princes, where regional warlords ruled and the emperor was a mere figurehead. Empress Mintiwab's story is one of spectacular success and profound failure. For decades, she was one of the most powerful people in Ethiopia, a woman who defied tradition to rule an empire. Her political intelligence was undeniable. She successfully navigated the treacherous transition after her husband's death, secured the throne for her son, and maintained a long period of stability and cultural richness. Her patronage of art and architecture left an indelible mark on Gondar, with her palace at Cusquam and the churches she endowed standing as monuments to her wealth, piety, and influence. She proved that a woman could rule with as much authority and skill as any man. Her boldness is a key part of her legacy. The decision to be crowned as co-ruler was a revolutionary act that reshaped the possibilities for women in power. She was not content to be a regent, a temporary placeholder. She claimed sovereignty for herself, a clear declaration of her ambition and her belief in her own right to rule. In this, she stands as a towering figure in the history of female leadership, not just in Africa, but across the world. Her story is a powerful reminder that history has always been shaped by formidable women, even if their stories are too often left in the margins. However, her legacy is also a tragic one. The very methods she used to secure her power, her reliance on her Quarren family, ultimately contributed to the empire's fragmentation. By creating a court dominated by one faction, she alienated others, fostering deep resentments that exploded into open conflict. Her inability to manage the rivalry with her daughter-in-law, Velete Basabe, led directly to the intervention of Ras Mikhail Sehul and the collapse of imperial authority. Her reign demonstrates that even the most skillful leader can be undone by personal rivalries and the unintended consequences of their own strategies. She built a powerful state, but its foundations were too narrow to last. So, what can we learn from Empress Mintiwab? Her life forces us to ask fundamental questions about leadership. What is the true nature of power? Is it the ability to dominate or the wisdom to build consensus? How does a leader balance the need for a loyal inner circle with the imperative to create an inclusive and just society for all? Mintiwab's story offers no simple answers. Instead, it presents us with a complex, powerful, and deeply human portrait of a leader who reached for greatness, achieved it for a time, and ultimately saw her world crumble. Her shadow lingers over Ethiopian history, a timeless lesson in the triumphs and tragedies of power. If you enjoyed learning about Empress Mintiwab and her remarkable legacy, please like this video, subscribe to our channel for more captivating stories from history, and share it with others who might be inspired by her journey. Your support helps us bring more untold stories to light.